Hello, welcome back to another episode of the HOS F1 podcast. Today is Thursday, July 13th, and F1 is a savage sport. Nick DeVries, after just 10 races, he's out, but Daniel Ricciardo, he's back. A little round of applause there for Danny. Adrian will be, speaking of back, Adrian will be here in a minute to give his thoughts on everything, but just had to hop on quick and discuss Danny being back, but also Nick DeVries being out. Unfortunate situation for him. Obviously, he only got 10 races, but he's not a young buck. He's not in his early 20s. I believe he's 28 years old. So I mean, he had his chance. As tough as it is the pinnacle motorsport. He had 10 races in a bad car, albeit, but he just didn't perform, and Red Bull gets the rest of the season to see with AlphaTauri how Daniel does, to see if he's maybe a viable replacement for Checo, or maybe kind of like a show me drive to see if he can get a spot somewhere else. Interesting thing to me is the timing of it. Excuse me there. The interesting thing to me is the timing. Like, we're only 2 races away from the summer break, so interesting that they would give him the seat now with only like a bit over a week to get ready for Hungary. So I mean, we'll see. I'm obviously very excited to have Danny back. I'm one of the many people out there that loves Daniel Ricciardo, one of my favorite drivers. So it'll be great to have him back. It'll be great to have him in the paddock doing interviews, just seeing him around. Obviously, he gets to race Vegas, which is a big deal to him. So just kind of funny to see how far he's gone from just a few weeks ago doing the alternate broadcast of an F1 race to now he's going to be in the F1 race, going from Canada to Hungary, broadcasting to racing. So yeah, good for him. Tough break for Nick DeVries. He was spotted Wednesday morning, I believe, in Monaco having lunch with Toto Wolff. So I don't know, maybe he'll end up back with Mercedes as a reserve driver or something, or I have no idea, but we'll definitely find out what's going on. We'll find out more details behind everything. But Helmut Marko's kind of been alluding to this behind the scenes for a while. From what we've been seeing, it's been alluded to for a long time that they don't necessarily love Nick DeVries in the car. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised it happened this early, and I'm surprised that Daniel Ricciardo's back already. But I'm happy. I'm excited. I think it's an interesting angle of it is also what this means for Sergio Perez. Obviously, he hasn't gotten into Q3 5 races in a row in a rocket ship of a car that Max has won, 6 races in a row. I mean, the Red Bulls won all, 10 or 11 races? I keep forgetting if it's 10 or 11 races, but they've won all the races this year. So pretty embarrassing for Checo not to be getting regularly into Q3. And he's getting thirds and some seconds, and I believe he finished 6th at Silverstone, starting basically near the back, but that's just not good enough. And once other teams start catching up with their developments, which will eventually happen, hopefully, if Red Bull wants to win the Constructors, they've got it this year. Max alluded to it, he's got it on his own, basically. But next year, the following year after that, Sergio performing like this just won't be good enough. So as we've seen, especially with Red Bull, they're a very savage team. So they're not scared to drop their drivers if they want to make a change, regardless of contract status. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this affects Checo. He's got to have a good Hungary and a good Belgian Grand Prix as well. So I mean, I don't think they would drop him mid-season, but who knows now? I don't know. But in terms of the British Grand Prix, not going to do too much of a recap of that because it's a few days past. I don't know. I want to hear Adrian's thoughts on Danny being back mainly, and Sergio Perez as a Red Bull fan, what he thinks is going to happen there. I'll talk a little bit about Silverstone. We had another grid walk moment. What's her name? Cara Delevingne this time, and I don't know. She's getting a lot of flack online, and when you first see it, it's rightfully so. I mean, there's literally a rule that if you go on the grid, you have to talk to Martin Brundle if he tries to come up and talk to you. and she declined multiple times. Absolutely just a savage line that he gave back to after she declined. I was saying, I'm sure that would have been real interesting anyways. But yeah, she's getting a lot of hate online. Apparently she was told not to do it, and you can kind of see her looking at someone when he's asking her to speak. It would have been easy just to say hi, like, I'm here, I'm excited to be here, I'm going to enjoy the race, but I don't know. I don't think it's not nearly as bad as some of the other ones, but I think people that are getting all this access that like big F1 fans would die to have, it is a little crazy, but they're living in a different world. They're celebrities. So what are you gonna do? In terms of the actual race, though, I mean the big takeaways are the McLarens. The Williams looked great in qualifying. Didn't quite have it as much in the race, but I mean they were still good. Logan Sargent almost had his first points, but obviously Max winning and getting past his lap, that's almost a given at this point. But Lando Norris finishing second, Oscar Piastri finishing fourth. Realistically, I'll even say as a Lewis fan that Lewis got a little bit. He got lucky with the timing of the safety car. Goes around, comes around. He's had a few bad breaks with that, so it's good for him. Good to see him get a good break. But yeah, Oscar realistically deserved third. So just pretty much out of nowhere, the McLaren's coming up and back into podium contention. Obviously, Lando getting a podium. So we'll see if that carries over to Hungary next weekend or if it was kind of just a one-off. But I mean, certain teams are making strides. It just doesn't seem to be the teams we thought it would be. And the teams that are making the strides are coming from farther back. So hopefully Mercedes, Aston Martin, or Ferrari will have one of these big jumps and actually be able to fight with the Red Bull. But not holding my breath on that one. Definitely not expecting that in Hungary, but we'll discuss Hungary more next week. Other takeaways from the race, Perez 6th, just another bad qualifying for him. Fernando Alonso 7th. I don't know really what's happened to the Aston Martin. It was definitely the closest car to Red Bull at the start of the season. Seems as though the other cars have caught up a bit, or like they've just kind of stalled in terms of their development. Nick de Vries finishes last of the drivers to finish the race in his final race in F1. It's a bit of a sad departure, but it's kind of been that way. Saw it coming. I'm sure he kind of knew the writing was on the wall. Just tough break in that car. But I mean, not too much else. Charles Leclerc only finishing 9th. Albon 8th. Good finish for the Williams. I want to look at the driver standings here. Bear with me for uno momento. See how far back the boys are from Perez. So Sergio Perez, second place in the standings, 156. Alonso 137. Hamilton 121. If Alonso or Hamilton pass Perez at any point in the season, that's unbelievable. I'm going to throw it back to Adrian now to get his thoughts on Silverstone. But as I mentioned earlier, mainly Daniel Ricciardo coming back and what this means. Excuse me. Throwing it to Adrian for what this means for Checo and Danny being back. Thanks for joining us. Quick episode this week, but couldn't let it go without talking about Danny. So, Adrian, over to you, pal.
Thank you, RJ. Sorry to jump scare all of you, but the professional time is over, okay? RJ is the professional of the show, okay? He's the producer, not me. Nah, I'm a loose cannon. Can't you just tell? I mean, does this face not just look like madness? It probably doesn't, but it's filled with just pain as someone who has 2 Ferrari drivers in their top 3 of their fantasy F1 team. I mean, Ferrari. I know this has been a Red Bull week, but what is going on with Ferrari, man? I mean, Silverstone was so embarrassing for them. Carlos Sainz, while seemingly he's been on the pace pretty well the past couple of GPs and even in quali for Silverstone. I don't know if, they're just degrade all their tires, but he was just, getting overtaken, getting a double overtake in one of those cars being a Williams on yourself. It's just, that is a tough look. So shame on you, Ferrari. It's your weekly shame. Shame on you, Ferrari. What else is there to say? There's nothing of note of that team. Charles, you've just got to save the team. You just have to, because Fred is obviously I, I'm talking like somebody that has no fucking clue what they're talking about. I know that it's not one person that can save an F1 team, but it's just disappointing because Ferrari is such a legendary team and they've just so consistently fucking dropped the ball. And it's kind of tiring because I kind of hedged my bets on them this season and it's not gone well. But back to the news that everybody actually cares about. Red Bull. Yes, RJ did a great job sort of recapping Silverstone. We're keeping it short this week. Sure, everybody that wants to know about Silverstone and what happened has already watched or read or listened about it, so won't go too much into detail. McLaren obviously are the drivers of the day. I think Oscar deserved that almost as much as Lando. Lewis definitely, like RJ said, got a little bit lucky with the safety car, but he still drove pretty well. The rear end on that Mercedes, dreadful, just purely dreadful. It just looks like such a pain in the ass to drive, but props to Lewis for capitalizing on the safety car and waiting. That was part of his strategy, so it's not all luck. He was waiting for the safety car and it worked out. Oscar still managed to get P4, which, like he said, it's good to be disappointed with P4, especially considering where they were at the start of the season. So Piastri is on my fantasy team, so I really hope he's able to keep sort of this momentum going and actually get a podium, especially in your rookie season. He's already proven that he's by far the most talented rookie on the grid and potentially a WDC contender in the future. We'll have to see about that depending on the type of car he's consistently put in. But Red Bull, it has been a week for Red Bull. Specifically, rest in peace, Nick de Vries. If you go back, if you've listened to our episodes, last year in Monza, I was really, really hyped on de Vries. I was supportive of him getting the Red Bulls or the AlphaTauri seat, but I very quickly went back on that. I think I may have been just a little bit tough on him because obviously he's a rookie, but he is the oldest rookie on the grid. He's 3 years older than me, so me with all my experience, but the point is he's a bit older than, not a bit older, he's a goddamn lot older than most of the rookies we have on the grid compared to guys like, Oscar and Logan and even guys that have been in F1 for a long time. Most of these guys are younger than, 28 years old, most of them. So all that saying, you're old, Nick. So bye-bye. No, I'm just kidding. Red Bull is so, this is the fifth time they've removed a driver mid-season, which I saw an interesting point on Twitter. Red Bull is sort of hailed as being the best driver recruiters in the sport as far as developing talent and nurturing it until they're ready to be in a top tier team. But swapping out 5 drivers mid-season, especially in the short amount of time that they've done it, that doesn't really scream all that high of a success rate to me. And this is coming from a Red Bull fan. So, and I know Helmut is probably the one behind most of these decisions. He has not been quiet or silent about his distaste for Nick de Vries' performance this whole season. I'm sure that didn't help at all in Nick's confidence and just his ability to take the car and manage to do something with it, which, speaking of the car, it's absolute garbage. Yuki Tsunoda is a great driver, but even he is continuing to struggle and not have very good performances week after week. So this was a very interesting decision. Swapping out Daniel, obviously, it's exciting. Who doesn't love Daniel Ricciardo? Daniel Ricciardo is one of my favorite drivers. And now, since Nick was on my fantasy team, I have Daniel on my fantasy team, which I'm so happy about. But was it the best way for him to return to the sport? I don't think so. It was for sure a rash decision that they made. Probably it was finalized at the Pirelli tire test at Silverstone, but I'm sure over the course of the weekend, this is when it all developed. I don't think this has been obviously planned for that long. So silly season is just always enjoyable, and we're getting a extremely silly season. There's rumors now of Leclerc being offered Perez's seat in 2024, Lando being offered it and either in 2025 or at the end of 2025. I'm not sure, but it is crazy. And now we've learned that Albon actually turned down the offer to come back into the Red Bull squad, I guess potentially to be a reserve driver, maybe, or just to be sort of put back into the fold like Daniel was, but he was like, nah, fuck that, which is good because he's been doing excellent things at Williams, and Williams needs a driver like Albon, and I think they've got a really good driver pairing. They're developing a rookie, and they've got a guy who's had experience across multiple, well, I guess he's had experience in a top-tier team, so that is really serving them well, and they're actually able to get really good results, especially Albon. And Logan is continuing to improve every week, so it's really nice to see Williams not be backmarkers every single week. I don't think anybody hates Williams. I mean, they're a legendary F1 team. How could you hate or not like a little bit of Williams' success? Are they going to be world champion contenders anytime soon? No, absolutely not. But seeing them get points and potentially fight for podiums in the future is cool. But people, I think, need to not get ahead of themselves. Silverstone is a very specific track. You got a lot of high-speed corners. There's not a lot of tracks that are like Silverstone, so we don't know if McLaren is going to continue to perform at the level that they are. I mean, clearly the upgrades are working. They're good, but is it good enough for them to fight fucking Red Bull and beat a Mercedes on softs while on hards? I mean, what? That is just insane. But McLaren know what they're doing, and I was watching that race and thinking to myself, what are they doing? But it turned out to just be such a high IQ master plan of a play. And even Lando was roasting them over the radio and in his post-race interview saying that some people are still beginners in some things or whatever he said, but it turned out to be the right decision, you little shit. Because that McLaren can get those tires warmed up so quickly, so putting the hards on was just brilliant. Even if Lewis had managed to overtake Lando in the next 3 or 4 laps that the race was ending, he potentially could have overtaken him again. So I think it was a good call, personally. Don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, obviously, because it turned out very well for them. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting race. But sort of the Daniel Ricciardo news has sort of taken over the zeitgeist of F1. I mean, the F1 page themselves have just been posting nonstop Daniel, which I know that's what Red Bull likes. They're kind of like McLaren. PR is a very important thing. I mean, that goes for all the teams, but some teams sort of prioritize PR, and Red Bull is definitely one of those teams. So the fact that I'm pretty sure the Formula One page posted on Twitter or Instagram 2 times about Nick DeVries this entire season, but since Daniel Ricciardo's announcement, they've already made 30 plus posts about him. It's insane. Daniel is a marketing PR machine that just can't be stopped. So what does that mean for the actual Red Bull team? So clearly what they're doing is they're pitting Daniel and Yuki against each other to see who's the better driver in case they want to replace Checo either at the start of 2024 or 2025, because that is coming, whether people want to accept it or not. I know there's a lot of Checo fans out there. He could turn it around this season and have a really confident P2 finish in the championship, but I'm pretty sure Helmut has already mentally made that decision that he's just not up to par with what they want as a second driver. I mean, you look at Max, he's gotten pole 4 or 5 races in a row, and Sergio's not made it into Q3. It's been P20, P15, P13, P14. It's not good for that insane car that they have, especially this first half of the season, that's just not been able to be touched. The fact that he struggled so much is, I don't know if that lends itself to the fact that Red Bull designed that car around Max Verstappen's body, or if Sergio is just not, sort of the opposite of Daniel, who completely takes to an Adrian Newey design. Does Checo just not really take to that sort of driving style? That's, these are all good questions that I'm asking myself to this webcam with nobody else in this room besides my dog, who I will show at the end of this. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think if Daniel is able to continuously outperform Yuki, which I think is going to be tough because his confidence is at an all-time high right now, Daniel. But if he jumps into that shit tractor of a car and starts having, not good weekends, it's could be damaging to him, and it could potentially fuck up his return to potentially the top tier team, which is what I personally want. I would love for Daniel to be able to return to his team, and God, seeing Daniel Ricciardo race in a Red Bull would, I really don't know if there's like another F1 bucket list item that would have as much impact on me as that would. It would just be so mind-blowing, and I hope it happens, but he's got to earn it. That's the thing. He's got to earn it, and Checo said in an interview he couldn't care less about all the driver moves. That's not true. You know, he may not care, but he knows it matters. He knows his performance is the determining factor of him keeping his seat, so it makes me think, how good would the Racing Point Force or in race the pink Mercedes in 2020, how good could that car have been if Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez were not driving it? Like, if you had maybe Leclerc or Lando in that car, it probably could have, I mean, if Lance was able to achieve pole in that car, I mean, come on, who knows what it could have done. But it's exciting. It's very exciting. I'm so hopeful that Daniel's able to actually get some decent results. But yeah, it's just going to be what we're going to have to watch. I do feel bad for Nick DeVries. 10 races is so short. And the original report was that he had until the winter break, but they just were like, nah, let's cut it, you know. And it's Formula One, you know. I do feel bad, but at the same time, you're at the top level of motorsport, and he has just been completely abysmal. So, do I disagree with the decision? Not at all. Is it fair? Is it nice? No, it's not. But that's just sports, so there's not really anything much more to say about that. I mean, he had his chance to go to Williams, and he chose AlphaTauri. So, I mean, you make your bed, you got to lie in it. So I do feel bad for him, but I mean, I'm not even going to lie. I'm so happy Daniel's back. I cannot lie about that. Like, I am a complete sheep when it comes to that man. I mean, Drive to Survive. Come on now. He's the best. How can you not love Daniel? Besides that, I think that's all I have to talk about. My punishment, since Max is on RJ's team and Max wins every fucking week, I have to do a punishment every time one of his drivers wins. So I've been doing punishments out the ass. So I'm going to save that for next week. I have to do a minute-long rant, a negative rant about Max Verstappen and Red Bull, which I feel like that's kind of been what I'm doing this whole time. I feel like I haven't been super nice to them, but I'll go extra hard next time. I do love Red Bull. I love that team. There's a reason they're my favorites, but you know, they're not perfect. So come back next week if you want to hear that. Next week we're going to be doing the pre-race discussion of Hungary, doing our predictions, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thank you, RJ, for doing the recap in the beginning and for accommodating. Both of us just have some crazy schedules going on, and sometimes it's just hard to find the time to block out, you know, an hour and a half to get these things done. So it's nice that we can still do these little segments at episodes. So, but it doesn't beat the real thing. I definitely, obviously, much prefer recording live with RJ. So come back next week when you're going to hear both of us live at the same time, having real conversations like real people and not talking to a computer screen. So yeah, that's going to be it. If you guys like this podcast, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. We're trying to post more. It's just me and RJ. It's very hard to run a full podcast and try to crank out content while working full-time jobs. So any support that you guys can do is super appreciated, even if it's just a like or rating us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So appreciated. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Say bye, Jet. Bye.